or not paying on time. There can't be generally always timely and such things. But I think the auditors are not usually instructed to do better, to be more precise. As far as SMA, technically what is an SMA 1 is to be tagged as D as per what RBI and SEBI instructed rating agencies, and SMA 1, 2 they have to be tagged as D. 1 rupee 1 day delay is to be tagged as D. Now even if there is an SMA 1, SMA 2 tagged, the rating agency is never informed.
True.
Now now arguably, as far as conflict of interest goes, it is not in bank's conflict of interest to tell rating agencies that it is D, because immediately I tag it as D, they would have to keep more capital. And if they are at all thinking of enhancing a line of credit or giving more working capital, if I tag it as D, they cannot, and it will trigger a further worsening of situation.
So effectively, banks are playing down the extent of NPAs so that they can lend more good money to bad companies.
See, everyone is following the rules. If you go to Adam Smith, all of us are driven by our own selfish motives, and overall we create societal good. So you cannot blame banks. They are exactly following what the RBI has told them to, and I am also doing exactly what RBI SEBI told me to. Now, the onus is clearly for RBI to tell banks the moment there is a utilization or overutilization of working capital for more than 7 days, you tell the rating agency. If there is an SMA 1, you tell the rating agency. They have been regulating this, why haven't they told?
But what RBI may say is, they now also for the banks they have given accessibility to that CRILC database. They may in the course of time they may say that the credit rating agency also will have an access to that. Because in my view, they will not, probably RBI may not want a bank to tell a rating agency, because it is the other way around. Banks take the rating agency rating to take a view on the exposure.
Yeah.
Other than me going and telling that it has become D.
Only point is, in the rating scale, everything from AAA to C rating has a predictive value of likelihood of default, whereas default is an actual event, which I cannot someone who is facing that default needs to inform me. Otherwise, there is no way for the rating agency, even though how stringently you manage to, because that's D is acknowledgement of an event. So unless that someone bona fide tells to me in writing that this has happened, I cannot do anything, because as a rating agency, I'll tell you, even for downgrading to a corporate entities, we have faced gag order from court because those issuers went and they didn't want a downgrade. And very clearly after that, both being listed entities, SEBI never told the listed agencies that globally rating agencies come under freedom of speech, you should allow them to change their rating at will. No, nothing of that sort has happened.
So effectively your hands are tied because you don't...
No, I mean, as I said, all of us follow the rule book to the T. So we are not following the rule book. The problem is we are following the rule book.
So the problems with the rule book. No, that's a fair point. Which brings us to another point, again relating to following the rule book to a T. The quality of disclosures in the financials, and also relatedly, the quality of disclosure relating to promoter leverage and how big a problem that is for when assessing credit risk for corporates.
That's actually a huge problem. I think last month we as an agency published I think arguably the most comprehensive study on BSE 500 corporates forensic analysis that we have done, and we found, not so surprisingly, whereas there are companies in India which are truly, in terms of disclosure and quality of numbers they report, truly world class comparable to best companies in the world. There are companies in India, but there are also companies, and unfortunately this may be larger in numbers, who play around with their numbers. And again, it's something like this. They are not fraud or they are not doing anything illegal. Let's take a step back. You take companies which are dual listed in India as well as abroad. You look at their P&L under IFRS or US GAAP and Indian GAAP. you would find there are companies whose Indian GAAP, and you can verify whatever in Indian GAAP shows a profit, US GAAP they show a loss. I mean, anyway, in rating agencies and in credit, we say EBITDA is a matter of opinion, cash is a fact. You can have 0 Naya paisa of cash in your balance sheet and still show a really nice EBITDA, and then subsequently you will show a nice PAT and market will jump up and down showing wow, excellent earnings, but 0 cash in there. Now your EBITDA or that accounting PAT never services your debt. You require cash for that. And that's where the problem is. So if you are, not that some of the ratios that are focused in India are the only ratios focused, but there's a over dependence on ratios like debt by equity. Debt by equity, a low debt by equity shows that the promoter has skin in the game. But there are companies which have gone into default whose debt by equity is below 1.
And that's because the equity
No,
is
because
deployed in
I build a
non-productive
plant
assets.
for 100 rupees, I give 50 rupees of my own money, 50 rupees of debt, but the plant is not generating cash flows. How does even a debt by equity ratio of 0.1 ensure in such a case that I will not default? Then the next best thing is we will look at leverage, EBITDA leverage. Now EBITDA you can manufacture. All within any gap in the world, they gives an element of discretion to the management, which is reflected in accruals, which is the non-cash earnings. Now you can use your discretion to the what is called aggressive accounting, and you can put a lot of accruals earning there with limited cash earnings, and you keep on churning out those numbers, because the problem is these accruals, which is non-cash earning, will translate from your balance sheet, P&L, go all the way into your balance sheet and it will spruce up your net worth. And if you have a really savvy set of accountants who would sort of all of a sudden wake up in a bad year when your net worth actually is getting eroded, would wake up that 50 years back you purchased this land and let us revalue it, then voila, your net worth comes back. So what is the cause of concern?
Mr. Seshadri, are banks changing the way they're assessing risk to incorporate higher focuses on cash? Are banks now being more careful about the way they assess credit risk in that context, in the context of the poor quality of earnings? Are they changing the metrics? Are they changing the ratios they look at? For example, debt equity, as Dee pointed out, is a very weak indicator, and to some degree even debt to beta. So are we now seeing a shift onto a different set of ratios, or is it still status quo on that count?
Yeah. As a banker, I will say that as a credit guy, my emphasis has been trust but verify. Okay? A credit guy, a credit analyst cannot take 100% on face value whatever is thrown to him, whether it is audited balance sheet, whether it is whatever is there. So what we do is, if possible, we try to get data. There is some Zauba.com or so many sites which you tell about the company, it will tell the product, and they also say how much product is produced, how much is exported, how much is imported, so many data. We try to correlate with that. That is the first thing we should do. And anyway, I will go on to say that if rating and also the financial analysis and all these things are past, what you did for the past. But my proposal or the limits I give is not for the past, it is for the future.
True, which
the
brings
only
us
thing is how I predict future. The predictability is based on the past, therefore I know his traits, therefore I try to project something.
Which brings us to the interesting point of covenants, because covenants in most Indian loans remain fixed to traditional
No,
ratios.
in my view, covenants alone doesn't do anything. That is why I come to the part we say that credit risk analysis and management, we call it CRAM. So post sanction, post disbursal, and all the bad accounts the banks have been in a position to exit is because they have been in a position to identify it early and get out before somebody else in the market comes to know. As he rightly said, before it comes in the rating and becomes D, I should get out of their exposure. That is the
Which is the problem?
that
for
is the
these?
existence. Otherwise, I can't be living with an account. Therefore, right from the day I disburse, I will say what is the sales he has projected, whether he has achieved it month on month. whether there is check return, all these operational monitoring is more important than my putting the covenant. The covenant normally will be put is the current ratio should be 1.17 at least by 31/3/15, where I will be in 31/3/15.
True.
Therefore, my stress has been more on monitoring on the account and monitoring of what is available to you, because bank is the only place where whatever is happening comes to you. Maybe there are multiple bankers. Even if it is multiple banker, you get to know of what is happening in the account. You get the DP statement.
So interesting question. How does something like Deccan Chronicle happen?
Pardon?
How does something like Deccan Chronicle happen? Are these just lapses in systems, or are these structural
See,
issues by which companies?
if you see any big exposure might not have been happened just because based on the credit decision alone. I can tell you.
True.
Any big exposure. Maybe you take Kingfisher, or you take whatever you can of any big exposure, including ABG Shipyard, which went to CDR and all these things. The banking system has put in 17,000, 18,000 crore, means there have been something else other than just credit.
But I guess the interesting point
That is one it is.
True.
I am telling you. That is why probably you may see that NPA level in public sector bank is comparatively more than what is there in private sector bank. Because there are various obvious reasons. Maybe public sector banks being owned by the government feel that there is certain duty to do something.
True, true.
Maybe I have to show the higher projection level, higher productivity level, therefore I have to do something. Therefore, once a credit decision is not taken as a credit decision, the foundation is wrong.
Absolutely. But in both cases, two of the cases you mentioned, Deccan Chronicle and ABG, there were private sector banks involved to a significant
Correct.
degree.
Correct.
So clearly it's an issue with the quality of credit appraisal, potentially.
If you look at those cases also, whatever I have determined, you have seen, if you see the private sector bank, they would have had some other way to get out of the exposure as possible. And the problem that happens is, it is like we used to call in our native place, playing cards. If I lose 10 rupees, I think that by betting 20 rupees, I will earn my 10, also I will recover. So when the account becomes bad, they throw good money after bad money. That is what BAFR, all this have been through.
True, true. Which brings us to the next point. So clearly, the way private sector banks beat public sector banks is potentially the way they monitor credit after it's been dispersed. And that brings us to things like covenants, that brings us to credit monitoring in other ways. And to what degree do banks need to be proactive in some of those? And are there ways that banks which have been less effective in managing their NPAs in the past can manage the NPAs more effectively by being more active?
That is why the RBI has come with that guidelines. In February 24 guidelines, they have said SMA 0. You identify the customer. If you
Sure,
are asking.
but that's in a way there's a problem. It isn't necessarily recognized
it is
that.
not recognizing a problem. It is identifying a problem. SMA 0 is not overdue. It's 0 overdue. But still, suppose the guy, I send some stock auditor. The guy says, I am busy with this, that and all these things. If 3 times send the stock auditor back, in my bank I will say that this account has to be marked as exit.
That's interesting. So you
So
see this
these are all
regime
not
actually working.
depending upon the days overdue, this, that and all this. I go and want to meet the customer. In 1 or 2 cases, as a head of credit, I wanted to meet a customer. I said that I have come here for courtesy meeting. And he said that, boss, I am very busy now. I said, just 2 minutes, just courtesy call. He says, no, I am too busy now. I said, you are the same customer who were with me for 2 days for getting the approval.
True, true. So
I think one
then-
point that I would like to make here is whether it is retail lending or corporate lending, asymmetry of information to the lenders, I think, also causes issues. So having a robust credit infrastructure where information is available to the lenders also aids in their decision. It also aids in giving good quality of credit. So what we've seen on the retail side, where over a decade of operations of credit information companies, we've seen huge successes in terms of the kind of lending that happens, the quality of lending that happens, which is also evident with the NPA, low NPA rates that we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years, whether it is personal loan lending, whether it is consumer loan lending, whether it is credit card. So it's quite evident that information-based lending has really helped and strengthened really in terms of bringing the NPAs down.
And Harshla, you were talking earlier about the difference in the way banks are assessing risk, and partly how that was affected by the meltdown from maybe 5 years back.
Yes.
So could you maybe talk a bit more about that?
Yes, so I think over the last 5 or 6 years, we've seen a sea change in terms of the way banks are lending in terms of the retail space, be it personal loans, credit cards, consumer loans. So today, almost no loans get sanctioned without CIBIL report and scores being checked for. So banks are looking at the credit history of an individual, are looking at what are the kinds of exposures that the individual has, whether the person is defaulting, not defaulting. And on that basis, they're giving loans. So it is moved from a subjective lending to an information-based lending. So that's a clear shift which has happened. And we have seen the results in that. We've seen in the last 2 or 3 years, the NPAs are really low. The credit that is being given is pristine across various segments. That's, I think, the success story that we are seeing in the retail side.
Interesting. Any thoughts on whether that can be replicated on the corporate side, and what the barriers are?
I think again the barriers are for a retail the information is almost crystal clear, but on the corporate side the barriers are actually quite huge, and it's half of the problem in the corporate credit is actually information asymmetry. Say for instance, I am a borrower, I have the option to go to a bank or to raise money in NCD format and get it listed. Now the moment, even if I delay a 1 rupee payment for an NCD, my listed entity, the listed NCD, the news hits the market and everyone is after me. For banks, even 90 days past default is not enough. I can sort of, for lack of a better word, manage the system and continue for years after of delay without being